And it is 7:01, President Ziegler.
Hello, I'd like to call the meeting to order. As Amy said, it's 7:01. This is the regular board meeting of the Watershed District. We're meeting remotely on Zoom due to the COVID pandemic and high-risk board members. I guess we need a call to order and a roll call attendance.
Calling for attendance, Manager Crafton,
Yes, I'm here, present.
Manager DeVell,
Present.
Manager Cook,
Present.
Manager Pedersen,
Present.
President Ziegler.
Present.
All managers present.
Okay, so the next item is approval of the agenda. And it says "and" for some reason on the draft agenda. There's changes or additions, I think that's.
President Ziegler,
Yes.
managers. There are a few changes to the agenda, primarily the Lake Susan Park Pond reuse repair. We received only one quote, and that quote came in substantially above the engineer's opinion of cost. We're removing everything related to that while we reach out to the sole contractor that did submit a quote and ask if there was anything special about it that caused such an elevated quote. And then we will likely go out for new quotes and bring it back at a later time. So items D and E would be removed. And then Mr. Pressman of Conservation Solutions will be joining us later this evening. He has some questions about some language in the agreement that he would like to discuss with the managers. So I have placed that item as the last action item prior to going into our discussion items.
Mr. Smith, did you have changes or are those already included?
No other changes.
Okay, any managers have requested changes?
Mr. President?
Manager Cook?
Yes, I would like to remove from the consent agenda item 7E, having to do with the waiver of monetary limits.
And you'd like that to be an action item?
Yes, please.
Okay. Anything else?
The only thing I would state is that first of all, I'll make the motion to approve the agenda with the proposed amendments by Mr. Jeffrey. And I would like to, on that note, change the consent agenda language to receive the staff report and receive the engineer's report and receive the regulatory report, only because I would like to reserve an opportunity to possibly discuss some items, but only during the administrator's discussion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. So the vote is to accept the agenda as amended. Can we have a roll or any other questions or comments?
Mr. President,
And Manager Duvall.
I had a question. I think it was for Mr. Smith. to make a couple comments on the Supreme Court case. I don't know if you were going to do that anyhow, or
Mr. President, is there still an attorney's report on the, legal counsel reports? That's where I was intending to do it.
okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote on approving the agenda as amended?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes,
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the next item is to adopt a motion to limit debate and discussion to 10 minutes per manager. I assume that's on each topic.
President Ziegler.
Manager Crafton?
Yeah, were we going to do the public interest part first, or?
That's next on the agenda that I have.
Oh, okay. I had it after. Okay, I'm sorry. I see the change.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, my mistake.
Oh, no worries.
President Ziegler, I'd like to move that we adopt a motion to limit debate and discussion to 10 minutes per manager per topic.
President Ziegler,
Yes, Manager Crafton.
I have second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on this item?
Yeah, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
well, first of all, our, I guess our governance manual, we're supposed to be proposing any type of resolutions, motions, etc. in writing. This isn't included in that. I think that limiting this to 10 minutes before we know what we're going to be discussing is inappropriate. I think Robert's Rules of Order history shows that it's been a appropriate means of handling discussions through the through time when items come up, and to basically limit it to 10 minutes, I don't believe is appropriate. It should be something that should be discussed at a minimum at the governance committee level, and they should be making a recommendation to us before we ad hoc move into revising our governance manual. So we already have our governance manual. It specifies we follow Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order give opportunity to discuss an item to 10-minute sessions. There's a process you go through Robert's Rules of Order, and we should be following that unless and until we get a report from the governance committee as to why that should be changed.
Do we have any other questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, can we have a roll call?
Mr. President,
Manager Duval?
I thought in the Robert's Rules, and I'm not sure if we discussed it, but I recall seeing it somewhere that I think in Robert's Rules there was a 10-minute generally assumed, but it also gave the prerogative for the president to decide to extend it if it looked like the discussion was fruitful for the group. Something to that effect, just as a point of information.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this item? Can we have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Smith?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes,
Manager Cook,
No.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
The motion carries 4-1.
Okay, next on the agenda is the matters of public interest. Welcome to the board meeting. Anyone may address the board on any matters of interest in the watershed. Speakers will be acknowledged by the president. Please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. State your name and address for the record. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Additional comments may be submitted in writing. Generally, the Board of Managers will not take official action on items discussed at this time, but may refer the matter to staff for further report or direct the matter to be scheduled on a future agenda. Do we have, oh, I see a hand raised. Mrs. Santa Maria.
Hello, good evening to everyone. I am here representing the Eden Prairie Duck Lake Association, and we wrote a letter to the organization requesting to be on the agenda. I didn't see it, but that's okay. Obviously we have this space in your agenda for community groups, and we are hoping to be able to progress with the creation of a lake management plan. So we wanted to let you know that we did write a letter specifying that we are willing to put as much skin in the game as we could. We have committed $1,000 out of our membership money, which is the majority of what we have, in order to help pay for any kind of expenses that we can, and hope that we can move forward in trying to get some of the first steps going, including with having the board consider the approval of the lake management plan moving forward. So to that end, we're just requesting to get to the next step with that, and hoping that that is something that the board will approve and support us on. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Terry, I thought we were going to add a update on the Duck Lake. We asked for cost for doing a lake management plan.
Yep.
What would the cost be?
President Ziegler, managers. Yeah, Joe Bischoff from Bar Engineering is preparing a scope for lake management plan. I expect we should have it by the July meeting for the board to review.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook.
I'd like to comment on this process. I'm not per se against having a lake management plans, but this is something that should come to the board. I don't remember it coming to the board to even approve the staff acting on it. And this is something that we should consider. They have things to do. We have a schedule, and so I think we've discussed about these processes before. They come to us, we decide if we're going to address them, then we decide to authorize staff to do something on this. And without some information on this, I don't think we should be having staff, and especially engineers, spending money on this. And I think we should be, before staff and engineers go spend money on something that hasn't been approved, we should have a discussion. And if Duck Lake wants a management plan, then they should outline what they're going to do. And I haven't seen the letter or anything like that. So I think it behooves us that not to take any action until we receive the letter. We've had an opportunity to discuss it and then direct staff, accordingly based upon what the decision of the managers are.
So possibly, Manager Cook, you paused, and now I've got the floor.
No, Mr. President, you don't even know Robert's Rules of Order. Okay, until I relinquish it or my time is up, I have the floor. Pause is not a relinquishment.
I apologize, but you're asking for something that we're
I realize you have an interest in the Duck Lake community, and it's been more than obvious, okay? And I'm glad you have an interest in it. But you know, we did the same thing with what is it, EHAP, et cetera. We got proposals, we discussed it, and then we authorized staff to go ahead and do certain things. Because then we would have a budget and an idea of what it's going to cost.
That's exactly what we're asking for. So, you know, we're not asking for a plan, we're asking for a budget for a plan.
Mr. President,
Manager
before
Cook.
we ask for a budget and spend money, we have to have some semblance of what they're looking for as far as a plan is concerned. A plan is a very generic word, okay, has lots of meanings. There's a statutory discussion about lake management districts, et cetera. But until I've seen something what the proposal is and why, then we shouldn't be directing staff to do anything.
Are you done now?
You know, you don't have to be sarcastic about it, Mr. President. You know, if you watch any part of C-SPAN, you'd realize the protocol that goes on and getting the floor, recognizing the floor, and people yielding, and or if their time has expired for expiring or calling an end to the time. I yield.
Okay, moving on. Just as a short rebuttal, we're looking for the cost to develop a plan. That's what we're looking for. Anyway, are there any other matters of public interest? Anyone else wishing to speak? I don't see any hands up. To anybody? Does anybody else? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. Reading and approval of the minutes. The first minutes are for the May 3rd regular meeting of the Board of Managers. Do we have any motions on this item?
President Ziegler, I move that we approve the minutes of the May 3rd, 2023 regular meeting of the Board of Managers.
President Ziegler,
Yes, Manager Crafton.
I would second, but I do have some edits.
Mr. President, point of order, please.
Manager Cook?
Again, the Roberts Rules of Order and just good meeting process. Person is to ask to be recognized before they start spewing out what they want to do. Okay? I mean, please, let's follow Robert's Rules of Order and best practices in conducting a meeting. I yield.
We have a motion and a second. I believe Manager Crafton has some edits. Manager Crafton?
Yes, President Ziegler, on page 2, line 9, the name of the mod is changed, so I think it should be just the Minnesota Watersheds, not Association of Watersheds. It's just so that we're consistent with what it's actually called, but it is the events. That's true. Then I had on page 3, line 29. What is that? Oh, the beginning, the second sentence there on 29, the of isn't necessary. So I just eliminate that one. But on page 5, under C, approved minutes of the April 20th meeting, on line 107, Manager Pedersen moved to approve the minutes of April 20th, etc. And Manager Pedersen seconded the motion. So I'm assuming I seconded that motion, but she didn't move it and second it. So that was that was my other one.
Thank you. Do any other managers have edits?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
well, first of all, I submitted, in accordance with the procedure that was previously agreed to and adopted by this board, I submitted comments to the various minutes. I've received nothing, whether or not they were incorporated or not. Our process was that we were all supposed to submit our minutes, our changes in advance to the administrator, who's going to compile the changes, provide them to us in the packet so that we wouldn't be wasting time during the meeting going through changes. So my first of all is my question. Mr. Jeffrey, did you receive my email with my comments on the various minutes?
I did.
And I move to incorporate my changes into the minutes.
Do we have a second to the motion? Hearing none. As I understand it, they're comments, not actual notes from the meeting.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
no, there were changes to the minutes that were incorporated in it. I'm going to follow the procedure. I'm not going to waste everybody's time going over something that was all supposed to be done weeks in advance.
So are we looking at it now, or the red lines? Is that a change?
That is correct. Some of these are mine and some of these, this would be Manager Cook. So yes, the red lines are actual changes to text.
So can we go through them, one at a time? So we.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you're scrolling down, I can't read that fast.
Yep. First one was correct the spelling of Matt Nikolai. Second one, Manager Cook suggested that we note the meeting started at 7:06 as a result of technology issues. Accepting rather than accepted, proposed resolution moved to delay accepting the minutes. Don't know. If not, oh, comma was added after not. Line 232, he said he would like a response on those four. It should read items as opposed to times. Space between March Treasurer's report. And those are the edits.
Okay, so are those edits acceptable by unanimous agreement?
President Ziegler, I'm fine with those edits.
Thank you, Manager Crafton.
President Ziegler, I am too.
Thank you, Manager Pedersen. Manager Cook, are you happy with those edits as they were listed?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I assume those were the edits that I submitted. And if so, I would agree to those edits.
President Ziegler. Manager that Manager Cook made and presented to me.
Okay, any more discussion or edits? Can we have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Smith?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the next minutes are the minutes for the May 18th continuation of the May 3rd regular meeting. Do we have any motions on this item?
President Ziegler,
Yes.
I move that we accept the minutes of the May 18th, 2023 continuation of the May 3rd Board of Manager meeting.
We have a motion
President
by
Ziegler?
Manager Pedersen. Yes.
If you need a second, I'll be glad to second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have discussions or edits on these meeting notes?
President Ziegler?
Manager Crafton?
Yeah, I had one, it's down in the upcoming events. The Minnesota Waters Summer Tour, it should be Minnesota Watersheds Summer Tour.
Mr. President,
Manager Crafton, are you finished?
Yes, I relinquish the floor.
Okay, Manager Cook?
I don't recall, Administrator Jeffrey, did I submit any comments on that set? Don't
I was
believe so.
just looking, no, that's President Ziegler. No, you did not, at least not that I have received.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any
Mr.
further
President.
discussion or edits on the minutes of the continuation of the May 3rd meeting?
Mr. President,
Mr. Smith?
I have a suggested change for the motion that's discussed at lines 66 through 71. And I emailed this language into Mr. Jeffrey just a bit ago, but I'll read it. President Ziegler repeated that the motion in front of the board is to ask legal counsel to review the legal authority for the board to delegate permitting decisions to the administrator and to work with staff to propose revisions to the delegation resolution to address the concerns discussed by the board. For example, such revisions could make clear that if there is litigation or if there are multiple things happening at the same time, like a permit extension plus a change of ownership, those special cases should be brought back before the board. I wanted to clarify that I understood the board's motion to be directing legal counsel to review, first of all, the authority to delegate, and second of all, to work with staff to develop changes to the delegation to address the situations that you were discussing.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I believe that that was my motion, and that is correct. That's a better recitation, I believe, of what our motion was.
Okay, do the managers agree to the revisions to the, or corrections to the minutes by unanimous consent?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, Mr. Smith, do we still need a roll call vote?
Yes,
Okay, because we're
on
remote.
approval of the minutes of the May 18th continuation, Manager Crafton,
yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the next set of minutes is the approval of the May 18th work session of the Board of Managers minutes. Do we have any motions on this item?
President Ziegler,
Manager Pedersen?
I move we approve the minutes of the May 18th work session of the Board of Managers.
President Ziegler,
Manager Crafton?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion or revisions to the May 18th work session meeting minutes. Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Smith?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, committee reports. The first committee report is the acceptance of the Citizens Advisory Committee report, which was in the packet. Do we have any representative from the CAC?
Yes, Arnie Bjork, Louise Ledford here as representatives from the CAC, Mr. President.
And his stinky dog Star.
And Star decided to join us. So let me, you all have received the minutes. I too have the draft minutes. The main point is that the CAC motions for the Board of Managers is none. But the key CAC discussion items for the Board of Managers is that there was a lot of interest in the first official Ecological Health Action Plan, EHAP meeting. And there was questions about how we can keep up to date on the discussions and information going forward. Under projects and project updates, there is updates, including partner cities. It's under section Roman numeral number 3, if you're looking at it. Liz shared draft items from BAR, including lawn surface area, approximately 44% of the district, historic and current tree cover, light pollution, population vulnerability, underdeveloped land, habitat quality, etc. We were told that the first TAP workshop was May 18th. Dave Paulson asked if the EHAP BAR report will be made public, and Liz said that once final reports and summaries will be made available, and eventually there will be opportunity for the public and CAC to provide input. Eventually, yeah. So, so basically, those are the highlights. It's always we also have time where members of CAC make note about what is on their mind. Arnie and I, we'd like to know how to get our HOA educated on environmental violations that are occurring, and we will be in contact with Terry and the Minnetonka environmental specialist. There was Dave Paulson. Excuse me, Arnie will be attending to a phone call, landline phone call here. What are outreach efforts and which are the most impactful? Dave Paulson had wanted to know, and how can CAC help? This was Dave's career, so he's interested in helping. This followed up with him via email about those opportunities. Savannah wants to know how the Citizen Science MPCA stream monitoring program data is used. Is data available to raise public awareness? So Christine Peterson, E&O for Minnetonka might be a possible presenter for how they can do outreach. So we talked about people that can come in and provide presentations to us. And Bonnie would like to know how we can comment on a permit after the public comment period and after the meeting. And Bonnie will follow up with that by contacting Mr. Jeffrey with her concerns. So it's always an educational experience. I really appreciate being on the CAC, and I am learning quite a bit along with Arnie. So I yield back to President Ziegler.
Thank you. Do any of the managers have questions or comments?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
So my question is, when would we get a similar presentation regarding, I call it EHAP? Sounds like the CAC may receive a lot more information than at least I have received about it regarding it, and I wonder if that would be appropriate for the workshop and also to have that information maps, et cetera, be made available to the managers, to post it to the website for access by the managers.
Administrator Jeffrey, do you have comments on that?
If I heard correctly, I lost him a little bit there. I think his primary question was when will it be brought to the CAC and when will it be brought to the board at a workshop? And that is scheduled in, I don't recall the dates right off the hand, but I believe it was August. I'm looking at Engineer Sobiak, even though he can't tell that I am, but I believe it was August that we were bringing it back to the board and to the CAC.
Mr. President,
Administrator Jeffrey, are you finished?
Yes, for all intents and purposes at the time, yeah.
Manager Cook?
well, I was asking if we could get the information that now that was shared with the CAC, unless I'm misreading item
No.
Roman numeral 3, Cap A1.
President Ziegler,
Administrator Jeffrey?
Manager Cook, yeah, actually, we could give you an update at next Thursday's workshop as far as the work that's been done thus far, and yeah, that's not a problem at all.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
if there's no objection, then I would like to have this on the agenda for the workshop. So we're at least as informed as the CAC is on this item.
I'll take that as a motion. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
President Ziegler,
Manager Kraft?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further questions, comments? Can we have a roll call vote on the motion to get the same update that the CAC did on the environmental? I forgot what the acronym stands for. The HAP,
Health Action Plan?
Health Action Plan. Yes.
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, do we need a motion and a second for accepting the advisory committee report and minutes, or is that something we can do by unanimous consent? Mr. Smith?
Mr. President, if you're asking me, my recommendation would be typically have a board motion to accept the report. That's been the board's practice. We discussed
Okay,
in Robert's Rules workshop that many boards will simply take those reports without the action. So it's the pleasure of the board.
so I'll make a motion to accept the report from the CAC.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Smith?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yeah.
Is 5-0.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the to confirm the board representative 19th CAC meeting.
President Ziegler,
Manager
So
Crafton?
I'm planning to attend.
Okay, I believe we can do this by unanimous consent. Do any managers object? Hearing none. The next item on the agenda is to receive the Personnel Committee report. And there was no meeting held.
President
Is there
Ziegler, there
any
is
report?
not anything to report. We did not hold a meeting, so consequently, really didn't need to be on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. The next is the receive the Governance Committee report. I believe the minutes are attached to the meeting packet. Is that correct, Mr. Jaffrey?
That is correct.
And I didn't see any issues with them. Or did any other managers have issues with the minutes?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
the minutes are what they reported. I do have issues, obviously, with some of the statements and apparently discussions, but they are what they are at this point. I don't think it's time to possibly to debate those, but the one thing that I would notice is that it was my experience at the, I don't know if it was this governance committee meeting or another one, but a lack of availability of the document that was being reviewed at the time that it was being discussed, which I believe is required under the open meeting law. So I would like to suggest that the governance committee on their notice and their agenda have a list, a link to the documents that they are going to be reviewed at that meeting, so as not to violate the open meeting law.
Okay, any other comments or questions on the Governance Committee report? Hearing none, can we approve receiving the report by unanimous consent? I'm seeing some nodding heads. Hearing no one opposed, I would say we approved receiving the Governance Committee report by unanimous consent. The next item on the committee reports is to receive the Audit and Finance Committee report.
President Ziegler?
Manager
Yeah,
Kraft.
so we met yesterday at 2. I have some notes. I'd be glad to share some of the comments, but I haven't had a chance to write them up yet as minutes to be submitted. But we did discuss the per diem payment policy quite a bit. Also the financial statement reporting format. There was considerable discussion about that. We were not able to meet yet with the ABDO representative, Justin. So we're looking for a time for that. And so there were other things that we did discuss in terms of format and how things are being reported. We're still considering some of those, and we will be looking at having more discussion on the internal controls, make sure everybody on the committee is clear on that and have some discussion about it, but we haven't gotten to that yet, as well as the electronic check signing. So those are upcoming items. And that's essentially what we had on our plate for discussion.
Manager Crafton. Are there any questions or comments on the verbal report as
Mr. President?
Go ahead.
Mr. President? The only thing I would add to
Manager Dwell?
Crafton's is it's still on our agenda and hoping that we can report on it, hopefully by the July 10th meeting, as we're looking to have a meeting with Cory Booker, I believe is his name, from US Bank on the 4M fund.
Correct.
To gather more information on what the fund is invested in and looking at the relative components of the fund and the risk that I think Manager Cook and others have mentioned in the past. Anyway, that's still on the agenda, and that's something we're actively looking to set up a meeting for.
Thank you.
Manager,
Yeah.
Manager Duval. Manager Crafton, did you have a comment related to that?
No, President Ziegler, no, just I'm glad, I should have recognized Manager Devell and asked for his comments.
Manager Cook, do you have a
Yes.
comment?
Just a comment, just a note, I don't know if anybody else did, but I received it's a list of audit adjustments and a couple other items from the county or the auditing folks, and I made comments and submitted them. So if anybody wants a copy of it, I believe I copied Mr. Jeffrey as well as the accountant on those.
That is correct. President Ziegler, if you're done, Manager Cook.
Yes, I yield.
Yeah. President Ziegler.
Yes, Administrator Jeffrey.
The meeting with Mr. Nilsson of Abdo is to take place on the 13th of June at 2 p.m. We wanted to do it before the workshop in case we want to have him present at the workshop, or if the Audit and Finance Committee have any other additional thoughts. But it'll be the 13th at 2 p.m.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Manager Duval.
so have we received comments from the auditors on adjustments? I guess I haven't seen any of those. Are we getting comments from the auditors on adjustments to our audit or such?
President Ziegler.
Administrator Jeffrey.
Manager Duval. Manager Cook had requested at the last audit that when Mr. Nilsson sends out his initial report that he copy Manager Cook on it. I will disseminate that as well as Manager Cook's comments to the board, to the managers after this meeting tonight.
Okay. Is there any other comments or questions on receiving the audit and finance report verbally? Okay, I'm going to accept this as a unanimous consent that we received the audit and finance report. The next item is consent agenda. I believe there was one item removed.
Let me pull up the other agenda when I can find my mouse. Yep, so
the consent agenda is to adopt, or includes adopting resolution 23-038 to approve the consent agenda, which includes the receiving the May staff report, receiving the May engineers report, and receiving the May regulatory program report. Do we have any motions on this item?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I move that we adopt resolution 23-038 to be completed to include the receipt of the staff report, the engineer's report, and the regulatory program report.
President Ziegler.
Manager Pedersen?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Smith?
Apologize, Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the adopt resolution 2023-039, electing not to waive monetary limits on municipal tort liability as listed in Minnesota statute 466.04 is moved to action items. That becomes our first action item. Do we have any motions on this item?
President Ziegler,
Manager Patterson.
I move that we adopt resolution 2023-039, electing not to waive monetary limits on municipal tort liability.
Mr. President,
Manager Duval.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have comments or questions on this?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
my recollection is a little foggy, but it was my understanding that we at least considered, if not approved, increasing the limits for tort liability, at least while Mr. Ward was the president, and we, I believe, received at least information on the additional costs, and I thought we approved the additional cost of having insurance coverage to cover that waiver. And so I'd like to know, is my recollection correct? And even if it isn't, do we have information on what it would cost us to have increased tort coverage?
It sounds like a Mr. Smith to me.
Mr. President, I do not recall the board in the past electing to insure above the limits. That certainly is within the board's prerogative. But I don't recall that was done, but I could be wrong. We could check, and I think Mr. Jeffrey can comment on the time sensitivity of this matter. I think it runs with our renewal of our premiums, and so I don't know the time sensitivity of this, but if there is a time sensitivity, we could certainly take this action and then get additional information about insuring above and probably modifying our premium if that were the pleasure of the board.
President Ziegler,
Administrator Jeffrey?
managers. September is when our policy runs until. So we would have July, August to make a decision. I'm going to do it. Regarding waiver of tort limits before, I cannot speak intelligently to whether or not it was waived in the past. Only I can say that I find in previous years, but not every year, some resolution electing not to waive the monetary limits. But again, I don't find one for every year, so I can't speak intelligently on whether or not Mr. Manager Cook's recollection is correct.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
in light of that, I would like to move to lay over this motion until such time as Administrator Jeffrey could search the records, let us know if it was waived in the past, and also ask our insurer to provide us with information on what the cost would be for increasing our tort liability coverage.
I'll second the motion because I think we need to vote on it. But I'd like to make an amendment to add what the additional cost potentially would be if there was a lawsuit, as far as maybe legal costs and other things that may not be covered by our insurance on this item.
I accept that as a friendly amendment, Mr. President.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Smith, do you have any other comments on this?
Mr. President, managers, I would say of all the watershed district boards that I've worked with over 30 years, most all have always elected not to waive the limits. But on a few occasions, some boards have. And the philosophy behind that is if there is someone that incurs greater injury above and that compensation is proven to be in excess of the limits, that it would be appropriate to have coverage and go above those limits and have the district insured to protect that. So it's a very legitimate discussion and policy decision to make. We can bring that information back and the board can discuss it.
Do we have any questions or comments from any other managers or administrator? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor to gather more information and lay this resolution over until we have the additional information. So this motion and second is to delay resolution 2023-039 until I'm going to say the next regular meeting of the Board of Managers.
Yes, Mr. President.
Manager Cook?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's exactly the way it should be posed for our vote.
Okay, any other comments? Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
No.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Okay, so this is laid over.
July.
Okay, thank you. So the next item is to accept the April Treasurers Report. Do we have any motions on this item?
I'll move acceptance of the treasurer's report.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Manager Duval.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on this item?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I have a couple questions. Hopefully be quick. Looking at the large numbers, but Midwest Aqua Care, wondering if I could be informed as to what that was for. That's on page 1 of 4 of the report.
Midwest Aqua Care, Staff Maxwell.
Managers Terry, Administrator Jeffrey, that was the Red Rock herbicide treatment. So it was, yeah, that's what it was.
Thank you. Mr. President, if I can continue.
Manager Cook?
I see a Red Path and Company, a significant amount of $7,900. I assume that that's in large part attributable to the audit. Then that leads to another question I have. I thought we were breaking down the audit and the accounting as two separate items so that we would have a better handle on what exactly our audit costs were, which I think should include accounting costs attributable to doing the audit. So I would like to see information on that breakdown, because I believe it's normally about $2,400 for our monthly accounting, but I'm sure somebody else knows better than that. So I'd like to see a breakdown on that. So that's a comment, but the other question I had was Sacred Earth Science for $3,800.
President Ziegler,
Administrator Jeffrey.
managers, that will be for staff training and for job coach.
And that, excuse me if I can continue.
Manager Cook.
Is that in a particular budget item? Is that like education training budget item or?
Costs, we will have to figure out where to take it out of. This was part of the January review when it was asked that I get a job coach. We'll probably take it out of professional development, but we'll have to, I assume, take it out of either payroll or somewhere else as well, where we've got extra funding.
The one thing I note here, if you go to Visa paid April 24, 23 US Bank and has the amount, is that, I'm a little confused. Is that paid before we authorized it, or was that the February bill that got paid that we authorized? Yeah. In the previous page, Mr. Jeffrey, 1 of 4, right at the 1 of 4. I'm sorry. Go back. My apologies. Go back further to the beginning. Should be
on the Visa page, are we?
No, we're in the cash disbursements page. Sorry. There, and then you see down there where right before the total disbursements, there's the Visa paid for 24-23, 3,000, right above the total disbursements line. Way down.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just I'm curious the fact, and I think it's part of our process is that we generally don't approve after the fact. But again, that's something that could be handled, through etc. But I just point that out. Does anybody have an answer for me on that?
That would be paid after the fact to pay the credit card down to, yes. So yes.
Okay, so that was to pay it down, but it paid prior to an authorization. Is that right? Or
yes.
Okay. Well, I just point out that I think that if that's going to be our policy, that should be dealt with in our internal controls and policies, and I'm going to assume that the Accounting and Finance Committee will pick that up as appropriate. I was going to, let's see. I have one question on page 204, the St. Hubert's Water Quality Project. That line item, we've got $50,000, and year to date we've spent 20. I thought we were done with that project, or nearly done with the project. Am I wrong?
We are substantially complete. That would have been the last. That was the release of Minger's retainage, and then a little bit of it went to vegetation management.
So we're done with that project.
Yeah, we are substantially complete. We will have 2 more years of maintenance, but those will be in the $3,000 range for the year.
Okay, so that budget could be adjusted later on if we needed to. But
yep.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to. I just wanted to verify that. Then on 3 of 4, we have U.S. Bank at a negative number again, and I'm always concerned I'm running negative numbers, with a financial institution. And can anybody explain to me why we're running negative numbers at a financial institution? when we've got $6 million sitting in a fund?
President Ziegler.
Administrator Jeffrey.
Yeah, Manager Cook, we have discussed this in Audit and Finance. We are meeting with Bonnie Burns from Red Path at the next regularly scheduled Audit and Finance Committee meeting. There are a number of questions we have about the way things are entered and what they represent. So we should have a better answer for you at the July meeting.
Thank you. If I can continue, I just have a couple more questions.
Manager Cook.
Two things that I mentioned. I realize these are monthly and these are not annual, but I believe I raised the question in the response to from the auditors already. Are we accounting for in the accounts payable the amount that we owe Eden Prairie or still owe Eden Prairie, even if it's on just a current year basis? Does that 307 include that number? Does anybody know?
President Ziegler.
Administrator Jeffrey.
Manager Cook. Again, we had a long discussion about this. Manager DeVille may have something to add to this, but don't want to put you on the spot.
Manager DeVille.
I believe it does not count that. This is an area that we've discussed at the last couple meetings, and we're going to have further discussions with Red Path. But I believe accounts payable are primarily bills that have, well, let's see, I can't answer that. Like I said, we're in the process of trying to understand what's in some of these accounts and having to go back in history to determine exactly what started it and what flows in there. And there's a number of things, I guess, that are on my list that I've been bringing up recurrent, and they're on the list to review with Red Path. And this whole balance sheet is basically under review, and from my perspective.
Yes. Okay, well, that said, I'll just make a comment also, is that I believe that we have money due the district from St. Hubert's, and my guess is that's not reflected, but you don't have to answer that now. Maybe we'll get an update when you've had a chance to look at it.
President Ziegler. Oh, sorry.
No, I yield. I'm finished. Thank you.
Manager Grafton.
Yeah, so what's in the accounts payable, if that was the question, those are bills, those are invoices that have already been approved for payment. But they have not cleared the bank. And sometimes it takes more than a month for them to get processed completely. So if that was the question about accounts payable, that's what that represents.
Mr. President.
Manager Cook.
So my understanding then that would be a different definition than under generally accepted accounting principles, which I understand is accounts payable would be anything that would be due and payable within the, I think, during the year or the next 12 months, something like that. So this is a different definition. Am I correct then?
President Ziegler.
Manager Grafton.
So this report reflects a compilation. So it's basically a reflection of the bookkeeping to date, or as of this date of this report. So the accounting standards are generally applied when we're doing the audit and making sure that everything is in compliance with GAAP, but this is just a compilation.
Mr. President.
Manager Dwell.
So if I could add to that, if Manager Grafton is finished.
Yes, please.
So the payments that we've made through the cutoff date, if they haven't been actually paid yet, they show up in accounts payable, but I think it goes, it's the opposite of what you said, Manager Cook. That we don't record them, we don't record payables because of the way we hold checks. That's what shows up in accounts payable. We don't, but generally under the general way accounting, when you incur the expense, that's when you record the expense on your books. And if you haven't paid it, then the payment would show up as accounts payable, meaning you haven't paid the bill yet, but you've incurred the cost and service.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that answered it or not, but anyway, this is I don't think we're totally sure exactly how we're reporting this, and that's been one of our ongoing discussion points, and the accountant statement adds even more confusion as to how we're doing this. So it's at the top of the list of things to fix, determine, and make it more understandable for all.
Mr. President, I don't mean to interrupt.
Manager Devallo, you finished?
Yes.
Okay, Manager Cook.
That's all I have. Thank you. I yield.
Okay,
So President Ziegler,
Manager Crafton.
so these were, that amount, that $307,874 or $47.10, that represents the March accounts payable and April accounts payable, and to a certain total amount. That's why they're still on the books. So I get notified that it's how it's broken out, but it does represent the payables from March and April. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to accept the April Treasurers Report. Do we have any other questions or comments? Can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Smith?
See, muted?
Apologize. Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is Resolution 23-040 to approve paying of the bills. Do we have any motions on this item?
President Ziegler?
Manager Crafton.
Yes, I would like to move resolution number 23-040, approving payment of the bills.
President Ziegler,
Manager Pedersen.
I'd like to second that.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Smith?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. So we've removed items D and E. That brings us to item F, adopt resolution 23-042, authorizing the purchase of 4 Hatch, is that how that's pronounced? Auto samplers?
President Ziegler, that's how I used to pronounce it until Staff Maxwell told me it's Hawk.
Hawk?
Yep.
Okay. Do we
President
have
Ziegler?
any? Yes. Manager Kraft.
I would like to move adopting resolution 23-042, authorizing the purchase of the Hawk auto samplers.
President Ziegler,
Manager Pedersen.
I'd like to second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 23-042, authorizing the purchase of 4 Hawk auto samplers. Do we have any questions or comments on this item?
President Ziegler,
Administrator Jeffrey.
managers, earlier this evening, you should have received an email stating that the number that is highlighted on the screen is incorrect. The number should be $63,668. And you should also have received a second quote from ISCO Manufacturing. That was in the amount of $66,696.51. They submitted the quote to us after the end of business hours yesterday. So just want to clarify that the amount we're requesting is $63,668.
Okay, do we have any, did we get a motion and a second on this? Yes, right?
Yes.
Do we have any other questions or comments on the resolution 23-042, purchase of 4 Hawk auto samplers and the dollar amount of $63,668, if my notes are correct?
Yes, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I have a couple of questions first. I noticed that the proposal included the possibility of leasing these auto samplers from Bar Engineering. And so question is why wouldn't we consider leasing these auto samplers from Bar Engineering, assuming that we would only be paying by the month?
President Ziegler.
Administrator Jeffrey?
Manager Cook. The sheer volume or number of places we have that we would like to deploy them, this does not even get us to enough sampler units to do it. Some of our sampling equipment, like the one that is in the Kraken, will remain in there for several years. So we aren't looking for something to do for a month or two. Typically, all of these will be long-term placements of samplers.
If I can follow up.
Manager Cook?
Well, I did some math and it seemed to me that it looked like you had about, you could be leasing these as opposed to buying them. And I guess, I don't know if the technology changes, but you know, often a rule of thumb is, you know, you lease depreciating property, you buy appreciating, you know, property. So I would just say that, you know, it deserves a look in some mathematics to make sure as to does it actually make financial sense to buy them as opposed to lease them, even if you lease them for an entire year. Yeah, obviously it depends on the terms of the lease, but for buying them, I would think we'd want to get a you know, have some type of calculation done as to what is the most economical. I'm not saying you're not getting them, but you could, you know, depending on the situation, you could presumably lease many more of them with the money you'd be spending on buying them. And so, you know, I think that would be a good management practice where before going into that, make sure that you've looked at it and this would be the best, you know, spend for getting the most bang out of the current bucks. And then my follow-up comment is, I believe I saw on the budget, isn't there only $50,000 for equipment, or did I misread?
That is correct.
So where is the remaining money coming from?
President Ziegler.
Administrator Jeffrey.
Managers. To your first point, we have ISCO units that are more than a decade old and still function fine. And any project we do is not a one-off, so we'll have that project, and then we'll have another project. We'll be able to continually use these for, like I said, we have units that are more than a decade old. So I do believe the cost benefit is there for purchase of those items. Regarding the second question, where that money is to come from, other than just listing numbers to you, I'll put them up on the board. So the vegetation management that we have done this year, we budget for the maximum amount that we would have to do in any given year on the lakes that we're going to be treating. And then based upon our survey, we will reduce those numbers or keep them the same. So the lakes that have been surveyed and are to be done, there will be a savings realized of $11,422.11. So that brings us to $61,422. Another item, actually, that I'd like to talk to the managers about, and Manager Cook, you brought this up in one of your comments on the staff report, is the prevalence of Eurasian water milfoil on Lotus Lake right now. We are having an internal discussion about if it makes sense to apply both Priscillacor and Diquat to Lotus Lake this year, knowing that an additional alum treatment water quality is going to improve further, and we are going to see increased Eurasian water milfoil. What we are considering doing is doing Diquat only this year to knock it back and control that population, and then do a whole lake fluoridone treatment next year to get on top of the Eurasian water milfoil. That would result in a savings of this year of $10,595 roughly, $10,000. So that gets us to 71,000 and some change, which would be adequate to cover the purchase of this equipment. Now, the other shoe though is Priscillacor is a much more expensive chemical to treat with. Lotus Lake was in the $20,000 range. We just a total ballpark estimate. I will not defend this number, but we're thinking it would probably be $40,000. Now, with that said, lakes that have been treated with fluoridone, such as starring, we find zero occurrence of Eurasian water milfoil following year. When applying Priscillacor, you can expect in 3 years you would probably need to treat again. So you're going to have to spend more money in the long run treating. Finally, the benefit of fluoridone is it's much gentler, isn't the word, but it's much less impactful to the native plants that are on a lake. So back to the original matter at hand, with that savings of vegetation management, even not counting the change to Diquat for this year, we're within about $1,500 of what we need this year. We do have additional budget and data collection that could pay for that. Otherwise, if we should move forward with Diquat only this year and a whole lake fluoridone treatment next year, that would realize additional funds available this year for purchase.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook.
I just wanted to follow up here. Well, that was a great presentation. I appreciate that information. I just propose that we actually make adjustments to some other accounts. And the reason I say that, and I know at the end of the year that was not done, but I believe it should be done so that going forward, we know what we can spend and not spend, because we are limited to spending what our budget says. So if we overspend in one area, that means those dollars have to come from somewhere. And I think we should know that in advance. So I would recommend that you bring up to workshop or the next meeting the proposed adjustments to accounts, to the budget line items, so that going forward we have an idea what we have to spend. That doesn't mean we can't change them in the future months, but at least everybody knows that, whoops, like all of a sudden I don't have X dollars for Y things. I only have X minus $50 or whatever it is. So that's my comment. So thank you very much for that information.
Yes.
Manager Cook, was there anything else you had on this?
No, that was it. I answered my questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we have a motion and a second on this. Am I correct? Okay,
That
I
is-
see some heads nodding. Are there any other questions or comments on the resolution to purchase the 4 Hotch auto samplers, resolution 23-042?
Mr. President.
Manager Duell.
So just a question on the format then of the resolution here. So how do we deal with the fact that we say there's a budget of 50,000 and then we're going to spend 67,000? Does that not beg the question that Manager Cook was just talking about in terms of our accounting? Or I guess the question is, we're stating that we have $50,000 in our budget for this, but we're going to spend 67,000.
63,668, but yes.
I'm sorry, the 63. Yep.
Mr. President.
Well, I think that question is for Administrator Jeffrey.
I will actually defer to Manager Cook on this. I'm guessing he has a more elegant way to phrase it or put it in there.
Manager Cook.
I don't know about more elegant, but I would move to amend the present motion to change the amount to the $63,668 and to add that the excess over the budget item will be for now taking out of a reserve, and that the administrator will come back to the board with any other adjustments he recommends in order to, if any, to replenish the amount taken out of the reserve for the excess of the 63,668 over and above the $50,000 currently allocated for equipment.
So we have a motion to amend the motion. Do we have a second for the motion to amend?
President Ziegler? Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
President Ziegler,
Manager Kraft.
I'll second the amendment.
Okay, we have a motion to amend the resolution and a second to amend the resolution to adjust the dollar amount to the actual and get the funds from our, I'm sorry, Manager Cook, which fund were we taking?
Reserves.
Reserves, okay. Is there any other questions or comments on that motion to amend? Hearing none, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please, on the motion to amend the resolution?
On the amendment, Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
The motion to amend carries 5-0.
Okay, so we've approved amending the motion. Are there any questions on or comments on the motion to purchase the 4 I'm going to say this wrong again. Hotch, is it?
Hawk.
Hawk. Auto samplers. Hearing no comments, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
On the motion as amended, Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager DeVal,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is to adopt Resolution 23-043 to enter into a cost share agreement with the City of Eden Prairie for native vegetation planting, bee lawn, and installation of energy dissipators in a storm water basin. Do we have any motions on this resolution?
President Ziegler,
Manager Pedersen.
I move that we adopt resolution 23-043 to enter into the cost share agreement with City Eden Prairie for their native vegetation planting, bee lawn, and installation of energy dissipators in a stormwater basin.
President Ziegler,
And
I would like to second.
we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on this resolution?
Mr. President,
Manager Duval.
so I have a question on the various documents in there. So is the city applying for a grant from us?
President Ziegler.
Administrator Jeffrey.
Manager DeVal, that is correct. The city is applying for a grant to improve a extremely poorly functioning stormwater management system.
So if I might follow up then with a couple comments then. So the grant is for 70,000. What is that difference again? The grant for 70,000 versus, it looks like there's a bid proposal for 52,000 attached.
Looking at can you repeat that, please?
At the very end, there's a bid. This
Yep.
is the company that's proposing to do the work with a bid of either 48,000 or 51,000.
Yeah, 51,610.
Yeah. And then in the grant, it says 70,000. So the grant is that coming from us? Watershed?
I think the grant, does it say 70,000?
There's a 70,000.
Yeah, we'll reimburse the city 50% or $11,355, whichever is less.
I think it might be down further. It's in the form itself.
Page 12 of the PDF.
President Ziegler,
Manager Crafton.
this is indicated that it's a cost share, so I'm assuming that
Yeah,
we
so
only are paying a certain amount. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I'm sorry, Manager Crafton, President Ziegler. So that's the projected total project cost. When they did the application, they assumed it was going to be 70,000. So they just put in that number as a placeholder when they applied. Once they had the bids, then the calculations are based off of that, so that they are only receiving from us $11,355 or 50%.
50% of the amount up to that amount.
Correct.
But the amount, then the difference then, is that coming from another one of our funds then? The grant?
The difference between the 70,000?
No, the difference between say they accept the.
Oh, no, they will, the city of Eden Prairie will be paying the remainder of the cost.
So the grant was for the 11,000, is that correct? And
That is.
And the 70,000 was the total project.
That is correct.
Okay, so they issued the grant for 70, or they proposed the grant that the project might cost $70,000. And this resolution is reflective of the fact that the watershed will pay up to the 11,000. 50% up to 11,000. So if the ultimate project cost 22,000, we would pay the 11,000.
We would, cost not to exceed 1135 up to 50%, whichever is less.
Yeah, so right now the city of Eden Prairie is paying the difference between the 11,000 and the 50,000 roughly.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions on this or comments on this resolution?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I sent a number of proposed changes to the agreement that I believe would clarify the terms and the responsibilities of the district, including when it would be paid, requirements for being paid, etc. So I would like to move to amend the. We have a motion on the floor, right? Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
a motion and a
So I'd like
second.
to move to amend the resolution 22-043 to add that the agreement be, the comments be provided by Manager Cook be reviewed by council and incorporated as council and administrator deem appropriate.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second to the motion?
Mr. President,
Manager Duval.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to amend the resolution to include text as shown once it's reviewed by legal and are there any other questions or comments on the motion to amend? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Smith?
Manager Crafton,
No,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1 on the amendment.
Okay, so that was the motion to amend and that has passed 4-1.
Correct.
So the resolution 23-043 is basically to agree to pay the city for the cost share up to 11,000 and change after legal and staff have reviewed the suggested changes. Are there any questions or comments on the resolution as it's been revised? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Smith?
Manager Crafton,
yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. The last item on the action items is Mr. Pressman. I'm not sure how you worded it. Authorize administrator to enter an agreement with Conservation Solutions with the advice of
President
council.
Ziegler.
Or Administrator Jeffrey.
Managers, if you remember that an earlier meeting, there was a motion made to engage Conservation Solutions on to assist us with the process that we were going through. We have been working with our standard agreement with Mr. Pressman, who is here and will be joining us later on tonight as well. There was some question about our insurance. I believe we have worked through that. But the other question Mr. Pressman has is he would like a mutual indemnification within the agreement. And I had told them that that was a decision above my authority to make, and that it would be the board's decision to make. I believe Mr. Smith may be able to speak on it better than I, but that is really the crux of this, is to decide if mutual indemnification would be appropriate.
Mr. President.
Attorney Smith.
I wanted to double check. Was there a request to waive the insurance requirements also?
Yes, so the insurance requirements would be just to have automobile insurance. Otherwise, the risk to the district is minimal in that respect.
And so, Mr. President, managers, the waiving some of the insurance requirements is not an unusual thing to consider when you're dealing with a contractor providing service. The administration and or the board perceive that there's small risk exposure and that the insurance requirements would be considered onerous by the contractor. The request for mutual indemnification is unusual. It's not something that we would typically recommend. Your services agreements with bar engineering or other professionals that you engage typically provide that the firm is agreeing negligently will indemnify. So that's the standard language. I think Mr. Pressman can speak to his concerns, but he's, I think, somewhat concerned given the history of the matter that he's working on, that there might be some exposure and he would like the district to step in and deal with that. I think I understand the history, but I don't think the exposure is significant. And I think it'd be unusual for the district to agree to also indemnify a professional service provider. So those are my comments, but I'm sure Mr. Pressman has something to say.
Mr. Pressman, are you on?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. President, managers, thank you, and thank. I think this may have been introduced when introduced to the board prior, but this is work I'm doing in addition to my regular employment. So I'm not a typical contractor with commercial insurance, and I don't have a staff and overhead, and I haven't taken on the expense of hiring legal counsel to help this contract terms. So I'm just looking at the contract where it's asking me to indemnify the district if I am negligent and expose you. And it just seemed fair and reasonable that if the district was negligent in any way and exposed me, that it would have reciprocity in that matter. And so that's the nature of it. This is a higher risk situation given some of the history of this project, although I realize that the terms of the indemnification clause probably don't deal with the majority of the risk that's out there, but it just seemed like fair and reasonable that if I'm being asked to indemnify the district on my negligence, that the district would be willing to indemnify its negligence.
Mr. President.
Manager Cook.
Given the history here, I think that, and I'm sorry to say, I've been having to deal with indemnification contracts for longer than maybe I care to remember. I certainly appreciate Mr. Pressman's issues from they're coming from. I appreciate Mr. Smith's comments where he's coming from, but you know, I guess my view is that in light of the history here, it would not be unusual for the district to agree to indemnify Mr. Pressman, you know, should he get hauled into court or entangled in litigation over this, with the exclusion, obviously, if it's a result of his, you know, negligence or wrongful action. So I would be confident that Mr. Smith would be able to draft appropriate indemnification language to make sure that, you know, the district is protected from Mr. Pressman's negligence and wrongful acts, and that Mr. Pressman is going to be protected if we end up in court litigating whatever it may be over this project, and he gets drug in and incurs legal fees, etc., that have nothing to do with his own negligence or wrongful action. So that said, I would move that we authorize Mr. Smith to draft a language that would provide for indemnification of Mr. Pressman on the terms that I just discussed, and likewise Mr. Pressman's addition of the district on the terms I discussed, namely its negligence or wrongful actions.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
President Ziegler,
Manager Pedersen.
I'll second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further questions or comments regarding the motion to authorize Attorney Smith to develop language, sort of mutual indemnification? Does that, Manager Cook, does that also include authorizing the agreement, or is that something that would have to come back to us at a future meeting?
As far as I'm concerned, that would be included in an agreement. I assume everything's being worked out. So I will, if necessary, amend my motion to authorize the conclusion of a contract with those indemnification terms and such other terms as, you know, Mr. Smith deems appropriate, and to authorize either the president or Administrator Jeffrey to execute that contract on behalf of the district.
I'd agree to that as well.
Okay, are there any further questions before we vote on this? Hearing none, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duell,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, that brings us to discussion items. The first discussion item is discussion of the use of an independent contractor status for per diem payments. Administrator Jeffrey?
President Ziegler, managers. So we've talked about per diem payment and process for quite some time now. Audit and Finance Committee has had additional discussions on it. Excuse me. I met with payroll specialists from ABDO last week, and at that time, their recommendation was that we wouldn't meet the conditions for independent contractor status, and we should continue with the W-2 process. I've also made a non-scientific straw poll of different administrators of districts in the area and found that there are a few so there was 7 responses. 3 of them do treat the managers as independent contractors and rely on 1099s and then pay them with their vendors. And then the remaining went through payroll and W-2. But the Audit and Finance Committee has asked me to find more information, talk to more administrators, as well as ask Redpath about other districts that they work with and talk to their payroll people about what they do. And then they have asked me to ask Mr. Smith to contact the state auditor and get their opinion on the matter. So there is nothing to act upon. Originally, this was going to be a motion or a resolution to adopt that policy to move to a 1099, but I just wanted to bring the board up to date with the discussions that have been had thus far. Short of that, other option would be to have the managers input directly into the payroll system and run it through the payroll. So we will come back. I will be coming back to the Audit and Finance Committee with additional information, and then they will be making a recommendation to the Board of Managers based upon that information.
Mr. President?
Manager Cook?
Yeah, thank Minister Jeffrey in that, but I will forward a link to the IRS website, which, you know, absent what they call a Section 218 agreement, leads me to believe that the ABDO payroll person is in fact correct in the payments. I'll forward that link to Administrator Jeffrey, who can disseminate it as appropriate. So
thank you.
I yield.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments on this item?
Mr. President.
Manager Duell.
So the only other comment I would make is, in addition to Mr. Jeffrey's comments, I've had short communications with Jan Voigt of the Minnesota Watershed, and I think, and maybe Terry, you can comment, but I posed several questions and I sent to her just before she was in the process of sending out a survey to all the watershed districts. So I think she included questions regarding a couple of things we're working on, including this. And having worked with clients in the past, this is, I guess I don't view this as a black and white issue, and there's some other ancillary things that I think that have come up as a result of looking at this. So I think we should report on this when we get a few more inputs. And the survey that she did to the watersheds, the responses are due as of June 9th. And she said the report would be made available at the upcoming Minnesota Watershed event next week or a week and a half. That's all.
Okay, any further questions or comments on this? Okay, we'll wait for the update, and sounds like multiple updates. The next item was a closed session to discuss potential for acquisition of property located at 9955 and 9875 Spring Road and Minnesota property ID number 2811-62232-0005.
Mr.
Do we have
President.
a motion? I'm sorry. Who is speaking?
Ms. Lewis Smith.
Mr. Smith.
I would recommend that the board adopt a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of developing terms for the potential acquisition of the property that you listed and that's listed in the agenda.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook,
I so move.
we have a
President
motion.
Ziegler,
Manager Pedersen,
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions before we do the roll call vote? Hearing none, can we have the roll call vote, please, Mr. Smith?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager DeVell,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
The motion carries 5-0.
Okay, so we came out of closed session. What else do I have to say? Mr. Smith?
He went away. Oh, there he is.
Mr. Smith, we came
Nothing
out
further.
of closed.
We,
Nothing
yes.
further? Okay. So the next item is manager reports. Manager Cook is listed here. I believe there's questions on some of the
Mr. President,
items that had in the agenda. Manager Cook?
Well, one, due to late hour, two, I think a little miscommunication on my part with Mr. Jeffrey. I'm going to wait until the July meeting to discuss or cover a couple of items that I have. So I have nothing at this time.
Do any other managers have manager reports? Okay, I have just a quick one. Obviously, most of you were in attendance at the dedication ceremony for the bridge project, the partnership with Eden Prairie. And, I think it was a good project overall. I think the dedication was good. I know in the beginning we talked about some kind of a plaque, though, and we never did follow through on that. Administrator Jeffrey?
President Ziegler, managers. The plaque has been designed. Engineer Schultze has provided that design to me. It really is just, it's our logo, the language that they wanted. It would go in the center of that, the railing on that
Fishing pier?
cantilever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
They're calling it a fishing pier.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, good. That's all I had. So no other managers have any reports? Okay, so we can move on to the next item, administrator reports.
President Ziegler, managers, a lot of my information was already in the staff report, including the meeting that I've had with the various lake associations. That Lake Association Summit has stirred up the waters, so a lot of associations are reaching out, looking for presentations or meetings with me. I'm meeting with Friends of Red Rock Lake on the 15th, just their board. So I will keep you apprised of what happens out of that. Otherwise, the Mod Summer Tour, I do have rooms reserved for everybody. The hotel where it's being held at, that went really quick because it's just suites. We're at the Ramada, which is just 1 block away. And it was a savings. So there's that. Other than that, I don't have anything additional to add at this time.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
could I ask just 2 questions of Administrator Jeffrey?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just wanted to
Yeah.
know if there was any status update on the office furniture and the HVAC.
President Ziegler, managers, yeah. So office furniture, I was given an updated quote. I will have that at the workshop. I have one interactive technology person that made a site visit. measure things up, talk to me. I was going to email her tomorrow and ask her if I can have her quote prior to that meeting. The other firm, he and I have not been able to align our schedules to meet, so I'm hoping to get that scheduled sooner than later. At the latest, I would see the July meeting of having the quotes from everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.
Manager Cook, was that it? I thought you had two
That-
questions.
No,
Okay.
no, that was basically the furniture and the HVAC. Those are my two
Okay.
questions. Oh, and I just mentioned that I had sent, some questions, et cetera, on the staff report and engineers report and to Administrator Jeffrey. And I got replies from them, and I haven't had a chance to look at the responses thoroughly. So I just mentioned that. Thank you for your responses.
So
I yield. I'm done.
thank you. So I guess I'm hoping to be, hybrid for the next regular meeting. I don't expect we'll have anything
No.
by the workshop, but it would be nice to get there. And I know the CAC is anxious also to get back to regular in-person meetings. The next thing is legal counsel reports.
Yes, Mr. President, managers. I think there was a request that we give you a bit of a report about the United States Supreme Court decision about the extent of the federal government's jurisdiction over the waters of the United States, known as the Sackett decision. I'm going to be fairly brief. I'd be happy to answer questions, or we could take more time about it. This is a very significant decision for protecting wetlands and small tributary streams in states where there are not strong state laws. In Minnesota, we have the Wetland Conservation Act, and it is in many and most ways more protective of wetlands than the federal regulations. So the bottom line is that the decision by the Supreme Court, which constrained the authority of the federal government, and I'll explain the way they constrained it concerning regulation of impacts to the waters of the United States, will not have a significant impact on the way our watershed district does business, other than if there are some cases in which we might undertake a wetland restoration project or other large-scale project that impacts wetlands, and it may still require a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers. And the Sackett decision does implicate the regulatory reach of the Army Corps of Engineers in that regard. The way I would summarize the change in law, this has first of all been an issue that's gone back and forth from Congress. It's changed with every presidential administration and how issues are treated in terms of the regulatory reach of the federal government over waters in the United States. And then the Supreme Court has taken this up a number of times. Until the most recent decision, the way that the current administration had promulgated rules and the way Justice Kennedy in the Supreme Court
Not really. Justin Kennedy had adjacency, right? And then it. Yeah.
Hello,
Justice,
can you hear me?
kind
Yes.
of.
Yeah.
Try again.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. The previous decision of the U.S. Supreme Court took a nexus approach that we would understand in a watershed context, where you can impact wetlands that are not physically directly connected to a larger water body, but you can impact the quality of the larger water body by what you do to wetlands. We know that in our watershed world. But the more conservative view that now is by the Supreme Court is that you need physical adjacency for a wetlands connection to a navigable water body for it to be a water of the United States and subject to federal regulation. And so the federal government's reach will be now more constrained. We can expect that there'll be more battles both in Congress and with future administrations. The bottom line is it doesn't really directly impact the way we will go about doing our watershed district business.
Thank you. Do any of the
With that, I
managers have,
conclude.
yeah, do any other managers or any managers have questions, comments?
President Ziegler.
Manager Crafton.
So the state is looking at taking over some jurisdiction from the Corps of Engineers. So I can't remember if it's 404 assumption. I think that's what they're calling it.
404, yep.
Yeah, there's a 401 too, but that hasn't been approved yet, but it's been in the process of development. So they've looked at the cost of that, taking over that jurisdiction. And I think they figured it's the benefit to the state. So if they do that, and if they actually do it well, we'd have even better protection for the ephemeral and intermittent streams, hopefully.
Yeah, so I would, President Ziegler.
Administrator Jeffrey.
Yeah, that is the one thing I would add. That is the one protection we do lose right now, because the Wetland Conservation Act does not regulate ephemeral streams. But our own rules do regulate them through floodplain and through stream bank stabilization. So we'll still have our rules, but the state will not be protecting ephemeral streams. And that's that memorandum of understanding that Manager Crafton is talking about. So it might implicate that.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this topic? Were there any other legal counsel reports?
No, Mr. President.
Okay. So the next item then is upcoming board topics.
Yeah.
Administrator Jeffrey, is there anything on that?
Well, everything that got pulled off tonight, hopefully we'll be coming back with that. So,
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I would ask, I think my understanding was Administrator Jeffrey had some tentative schedule of topics going forward and including workshops. And if I'm correct, I wonder if you could circulate that to us.
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, yeah, that was, I was going to present the topics that all the managers have come up with at this coming workshop.
Okay.
So.
Good. So we've got the upcoming summer tour, the board workshop, and then the regular July meeting is on the 12th, it looks like, because of travel.
Yep.
Okay.
Mr.
Manager
President?
Cook?
Speaking of upcoming events, do we have anything scheduled during the summer here or fall? We could do outside as a meet and greet and have people over, and it seems to me if we have some nice weather, it'd be nice to have we have it in the parking lot. We don't have to have it in the building. That's what I was thinking. We could just cordon off part of the parking lot and have people over and have something to drink. I realize we can't do alcohol, but there's a bar right down.
There's a brewery right next door now. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll just wander down there and get our own, what do they call them, growlers, and come on back. But I thought that would be something we should think about since COVID's, over, even if we don't meet indoors, have some type of outdoor gathering.
I know we talked about at one point at doing that with the CAC out like we did at that one Chanhassen, I forgot the name of the lake anyway.
Yeah.
Ann.
Lake Ann Park.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Okay.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Okay. Do any other managers have questions or comments about the get together potential? Okay, any
Mr. President. So
manager as well?
are we still planning to do some kind of a tour like we did last year?
President Ziegler, managers, yeah, we have been talking about that internally as a staff.
I think that would be great.
Yeah. Problem is we won't have a whole lot going this fall. It'll be spring when everything's going, but so that's what our conversation has been. Do we
Okay.
want to go out to sites that we're thinking about doing stuff on and talk about that, or look at things that are buried in the ground?
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
there being nothing else, I would like to move to adjourn.
I'll second.
That didn't take long. We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Smith?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Bye,
good night.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks, Amy.